Hi, everybody. Thanks a lot to the ESA microelectronics team for inviting me, and to Frank Gessler for hosting this very nice event. I guess most of you are already familiar with space division of Thales Group, Thales Alenia Space. But Thales has lots of other activities. We are involved, of course, in space, but also avionics, defense, communication, and cybersecurity. With 81,000 employees in 68 countries, the group invests 1.1 billion euros in R&D every year, about 6% of its revenues. I'm part of the Corporate Research and Technology Center, located near Paris, and the computer division, the computer science department, has recently been renamed Cortex Labs to emphasize our activities on artificial intelligence. With that out of the way, let's start with a little story. It was about already more than 20 years ago, and I was still a student, an intern at Thales, working on a brand new software microprocessor. We talked about this one a little bit yesterday. And in that context, I had the opportunity to visit a convention about Linux and open source software. Over there was lots of huge booths with people in suits and quite empty, people like IBM or Red Hat, and at the back, a few very small booths packed with very enthusiastic people. And one of them was a guy with a great bird, Richard Stallman, RMS, the GNU himself. Open source software is great and all, I love it. But at the time, I was really focused on this hardware design and software microprocessor. And I was using websites such as opencourse.org, and I was aware of the Leon processor as well. So I had one question to ask him. What are his thoughts on open source hardware? And I asked in English because I didn't know at the time that he was fluent in French. And he answered, you know, if you need $1 billion factory to build a chip, it doesn't really matter if the design is free or not. And I said, yes, but with programmable logic devices like FPGAs that cost maybe hundreds of dollars, you can make your design and download it into the chip, and then you have it. And he said immediately, if you can download it, it is software, and the Free Software Foundation takes care of it. So, obviously the FSF has a more nuanced position now. They acknowledge that open hardware design is very important to be open source, but that a physical object can hardly be free as in free speech, and definitely not as in free beer. Still, the 4 freedoms of open source can apply to hardware design. The freedom to use it, the freedom to look how it works and to modify it for it to better suit our needs, the freedom to redistribute the design, and the freedom to distribute the modified version. So in this talk, let's explore how these 4 freedoms can help us to take back control over many subjects, many challenges that we face when we design critical embedded systems. So this is basically a summary, not a further summary of my talk. I will try to go from smaller details into more abstract concepts. So it will be kind of a big zoom out journey. So let's start with a fine-grained constraint that the challenges we face in critical embedded systems, as those will be discussed in more details in the next presentations of this session. we need to master the worst case behavior of the system, whatever happens, and in the context of harsh environment, limited resources, and constraints, size, waste, and power. The safety critical systems are often required to be fail operational and are increasingly the target of cyber attacks as well. So for all these requirements, we cannot use consumer grade or IT computers. Custom solutions are needed in terms of architecture, in specific input outputs, and implementation technology. The thing is, critical embedded systems is a small market, and many component of the shelf providers optimize their product for the best average case performance and not the worst case performance that we care about. So for example, when using a multi-core processor in a real-time environment, you need to be really focused on the interaction of the processors with the hardware shared resources. Because timing interference can occur, and then your system is no longer deterministic. So when, depending on the arbitration policy of a bus or cache memory controller, or one request will be served while another will have to wait, and to wait an amount of time that depends on another unrelated application. So in my lab, we studied this problem for quite some time, and we have developed monitoring techniques and mitigation strategies, notably based on the use of hardware performance counters deep inside the core. One key component is the interconnect, because all the data traffic comes through it. And often it is a black box in off-the-shelf components. A simple bus only allows one transaction at a time, and this is a major bottleneck when you have more than a couple of initiators. More complex systems use network on chip that offer much better properties if properly tuned and set up. But in many cases, documentation is not precise enough to ensure the required properties. So an open source design allows us to analyze the transaction, how they will interact on shared memories, on peripherals, and all the paths that leads to them. And so we can know the arbitration policy, we can tweak them in order to improve the isolation between applications and improve the worst case scenarios instead of the average performance. By the way, a quick note on implementation. Many people see FPGAs are just as a prototype before going to ASIC. And in many low volume niche products, FPGA is indeed in the final product. So it's good to keep that in mind. So we need custom solutions. What can we do about it? There is a kind of cyclic oscillation between standardization and customization that has been theorized by Tsuigo Makimoto in the 90s as the wave that bears its name. In this extended version, it seems like we are now in a standardization phase with, for example, the IT industry integrating more and more commodities such as AI accelerators into large chips, while Moore's law still holds. But we may soon go back in the trend of customization. So let me conduct a quick poll here. Raise your hand if you are working toward the standardization of, say, a line of product. Yeah, a few hands over there. And now, raise your hand if you are making a custom design each time. Quite some more. So you are already ahead of the wave. So the customization may take different forms. In the RISC-V offers many extensions of the ISA to choose from, to build from a small microcontroller to a full-featured application processor up to supercomputers, as we saw earlier today. And some are pretty common choices, such as having an FPU or not, or hardware-assisted virtualization. So those are named with a single letter. Some are more specific and have longer names, such as, for example, SSCO-FPMF, the extension to count overflows and mode-based filtering on the performance monitoring counters. So we can go quite deep into the specifics of what we implement in a RISC-V core. There is room in the ISA to implement custom instructions, so you can tweak the processor to your specific algorithm. You can also integrate accelerators besides the core. For example, using interfaces like CVXIF, defined by Open Hardware Foundation, or in the Pulp ecosystem as well. So let's talk about software, because all of that needs software too. It's not just standalone hardware. And porting software on various custom hardware platforms is never fun. This is why, in my opinion, RISC-V is a real game changer, because it's a modular specification. You have binary compatibility over the basic ISA on all RISC-V implementations, the same compilers for all, and there are mechanisms to let the software discover which extensions are implemented. This interoperability goes beyond the application and the toolchain. You can also have instruction set simulators and compliance test suites and debug tools. By the way, the debug specification has been ratified recently in February 2025, and the trace interface and protocols have also been ratified earlier last year. This means that operating systems and hypervisors can support many RISC-V platforms from different providers. Only the drivers need, of course, to be adapted. An OS company I know is optimizing its porting investment when they support conjointly NOL5, CVA6, and PolarFire SOC, to name a few. So when we couple open source software, such as some operating systems, and open source hardware, there is a very good opportunity for co-design, as those can evolve jointly. And sometimes the hardware becomes even more flexible than large legacy software. In the long run, we may even see some shifts in the hardware-software interface, as the relevance of a hardware abstraction layer would shrink if we have a very wide adoption of RISC-V. So after customization, let's talk a bit about standardization. As a modular specification, open for customization, RISC-V is not set in stone yet. RISC-V International is managing the huge task of coordinating the numerous work groups contributing to the specification in order to cover the needs of all kinds of domains. Your organization is probably already a member of RISC-V International, and if it's not, you can also join as an individual. And then you can take part of the standardization process. You can really have an influence here, and we need more participants from EU countries. So, for example, in my lab, we worked on the IUMMU specification, and we also involved in several security-related features, such as control flow integrity. And within RISC-V International, there are also specific interest groups. I attend regularly the SIG on safety, which is led by my colleague Daniel Gracia. And where we identify gaps to be filled in order to support better the requirements of safety critical systems. There is also a SIG automotive, but there is no SIG space yet. If you want one, get involved. Then, after the specification, there are many different implementations, several from the sponsors of this event, and also some industry associations, such as the Open Hardware Foundation, that gather a community around a particular RISC-V implementation and work together to bring them toward a higher technology readiness level. So you can really pick and choose what flavor of RISC-V you want and contribute to its adoption. Let's zoom back a little bit more. One topic that greatly benefits from openness is trustworthiness on the design, both for safety critical and cybersecurity point of view. The capability to audit the design is essential to detect potential flaws or vulnerabilities. A white box approach is also a great help to perform safety certification, for example, in avionics, where we need also a complete documentation and requirement traceability. Wide adoption of a computing architecture, even in different domains, can give usage experience, which gives more confidence in the design for a certification authority. We can also apply formal verification and formal proof techniques, as does a team in my lab, to mathematically uncover corner cases that may have escaped the validation process. In a community effort quite unique for RISC-V, the ISA specification has been formally defined in the SAIL language, and using that, my colleagues use model checking, for example, in the Tristan project, to ensure that the RTL code matches the specification. Now, let's talk a little bit about open source licenses. Those were created first for open source software and are either used as is or modified a little bit to better fit the specifics of hardware design. The specification itself is covered, is licensed under Creative Commons Attribution 4, and each implementation can have its own license. A property of a good license, in my opinion, is that it allows to quickly build quickly reach a critical mass of contribution in the form of an active community that fixes lots of bugs and implements lots of features. Permissive open source licenses are favored by the industrial end users because you can mix an open source based design with some proprietary secret sauce like customization or existing IPs as market differentiators. Those permissive licenses are often based on MIT or Apache licenses, such as the SolderPad license. On the other hand, copyleft licenses ensure, such as the GPL, guarantees that the design will remain open source and benefit from the community improvement and crowdsourced debug. It also means that any extension will inherit this license. And there is no clear boundary to connect modules with a different model of development, a different license with it. And then the third kind, you can also have proprietary implementations of the open standard. But that defeats many of the advantages we talked about, unless it's your own IP that you are building in-house. Now, let's try to look at a bigger picture. The world is changing fast, and there is a lot of geopolitical uncertainty brewing up. There are ongoing conflicts, for example, in Ukraine, others that might arise and disrupt the global supply of semiconductors around Taiwan, and large political shifts are ongoing that might restrict access to some technologies, for example, from the US. There is a trend that seems to get stronger lately to build EU sovereign capabilities in computing, and I personally think that RISC-V is a great opportunity for that, as it is independent from a particular vendor. The specification and many implementation are widely international efforts. And given the political will to do so, notably through EU-funded research projects, we team up at the European level to build a complete computing ecosystem based on open source building blocks, some customizations, and chip manufacturing in the EU. A great example of that was the previous talk about HPC, but we can apply the same mindset to critical embedded systems. So I hope that this trend will continue to gain momentum and that an even larger industrial user base will get involved in open source contributions. And of course, for that, we will need highly skilled people to develop those advanced solutions. That's why education is very important. After all, RISC-V was initially devised as a teaching platform. This is why it is a great opportunity to work together with universities and engineering schools to explain our challenges and get students interested in hardware design. With an easily accessible platform to learn from and to improve. At Thales, we organize, together with two French researchers and teaching networks of excellence, a RISC-V student contest. Now it is its fifth year, with more than a dozen teams from more than 10 universities each year. Its objectives are to promote RISC-V and computer architecture in French education, to extend RISC-V and open hardware communities, and strengthen the relations between industry and academy. Using an open source design kit that we provide, the students' teams try to improve on a different topic each year, such as performance, energy efficiency, or cybersecurity, and with great results each time. So we focused on our local ecosystem, but feel free to do the same in your area. You can even use our design kit as it's readily available and fully open source. And now for a final step in our big zoom out, we must recognize the open source hardware in general and RISC-V in particular as a wonderful platform for experimentation and research. It is possible for industry and academia to share a common experimental platform where cutting-edge ideas meet real-world expectations. At Cortex Labs, we are involved in several research projects funded by EU, by ESA, and by the French Research Agency. After the RISC project that I presented in the previous edition of this workshop, we are involved in, for example, NeuroSoc, Tristan, Isolde, SEC5, to name a few. For example, in SEC5, we add dynamic mechanisms that can be used for cybersecurity monitoring and runtime mitigation. So RISC-V can be both the subject of improvements and a platform to integrate innovative building blocks such as AI accelerators. So to conclude, on all of those topics, from the tiniest detail of the architecture to the broadest concept, the openness of RISC-V allows us to take back control. It allows us to get under the hood and tune the design to the very specific needs of our niche applications. It allows us to get involved in the community, to share our ideas, and keep a bit of secret sauce as well. I hope I've inspired you to get involved in the community. So what will be your next innovation, your next, what will you take back control on? I'd be glad to hear about it at the next coffee break. Thanks a lot for your attention.